The Geneva Bible, 1587 edition. The Bible, that is, the Holy Scriptures contained in the Old and New Testament, translated according to Hebrew and Greek, and conferred with the best translations in divers languages. Fear ye not, stand still, and behold the salvation of the Lord, which he will show to you this day. Exodus 14:13. Great are the troubles of the righteous, but the Lord delivereth him out of them all. Psalms 34:19. The Lord shall fight for you, therefore hold you your peace. Exodus 14:14. Imprinted at London by Christopher Barker, printer to Queen Majesty, 1587, cum privilegio, and that would be Her Majesty, Queen Elizabeth the First, daughter of King Henry the Eighth. And this book is the a really key source that helped inform the King James the First of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland, and who was also King James the Sixth of Scotland, informed his version of the Bible. He also has a King James the First does of the United Kingdom, His Majesty. The has a demonology. Um, I in some way, by genetics, have some genetic link to King James the First, and that I know for sure. And though it is, and I do not know that I have a genetic link to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth I, nor do I know by written authority, by my DNA, that I have any link to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, because it is not written in any of my texts. I do know that I have some genetic sharing with uh, His Majesty, who was called the consort, Prince Philip, who is of Greece and Denmark and Macedonia, and therefore Prince Charles, His Majesty, the Prince of Wales, and the Duke of, and also His Majesty, His Royal Highness. It should both be called His Royal Highness at this point. Who knows when you're listening? Um, uh, William, the Duke of Cambridge. Um, so that's what I know. But I don't, and I also know that I'm related to His Majesty King Henry the Eighth, and I just believe that it's just out of etiquette. You don't mention being related to a ruling monarch, or at least in this case to Her Majesty, uh, because my role is as a person who lives far away. There's, I would say, the royal family in the world is probably 100,000 or a million people, and those who rule with crowns are probably about 1,000, if not more. They're the very, very elite, and the rest of us are privileged to have some overlapping genetic relationship to them, and to present what we can of what we know. So I'm going to go for it now with the book of the Gospel of John from the Geneva Bible, chapter 1. Uh, Verses 1 through 39, read with the notes of the reformers, This is the United Reformed Church of Geneva, which then would eventually become, in its own way, the Church of England. This church is not a rebellious church against Rome. It is separated only in that it wants to speak one and not it's non-Latin speech, and it wants to use other documentations that are not just the Vulgate. So they're not in rebellion at all, except in some rules of the Curia, which didn't allow it. And by having a separate church, people aren't confused about why there's information is here. And I did pursue apostolic succession that descends from the hand of Jesus to Peter on down to others who were able to literally shake the hands of these people and allow me to teach as a presbyter, as I interpreted and it was interpreted to me. And I, as a Levite, I've done some research. A Levite who also is from Ephraim and Manasseh. I have a Levitical priesthood that is by birth. So I present this on my own authority, but with the support of me seeking out initiation in these approaches. And I'm just going to read it straight through. You'll notice if you have a traditional Bible that there are different things added on, and those are the notes. So, chapter 1, verse 1 In the Son of God is one of, again, verse 1 in the Son of God is one. I'll say this before I go. So this is in the script is intentionally written in what we call the medieval English. Sometimes the spellings are as they were at the time, and sometimes they're there to offer insights even deeper. So you'll see a word spelled interestingly, and it's not only that was the old English word, but they're telling another secret that couldn't be told at the time. So, chapter 1 In the Son of God is of one and the self same eternity or everlastingness, and of one and the self same essence or nature with the Father. Before we go further, Son of God, the sons of God saw the daughters of man, finding them beautiful, married them, went into them, and produced the giants of old. A son of God is an angel. It means angel. Son of man means Messiah. Something else I took from S. Scott Barchi at UCLA. May his life be long and longer. And so a son of God is an angel. So the son of God, Elohim, uh, Bene Elohim, the sons of the Elohim, the sons of God, or the sons of the angels. This is what they're talking about. So when we speak of Jesus, we're not speaking of a fallen angel who went into a woman, and why some of these people didn't. We're talking about an angel who didn't fall, and whether and so this is what we're saying, that he's an angel, and the angels Elohim, often is translated as God, and for some people who don't have a problem with it, who know the high God is himself, among the Tolkien group, Aru, Elu. That they know he exists, and then the sons of God are called sometimes by his name. There's a tradition in Arabic and in Aramaic and others that you call a son by his father's name, and a son is someone uh, who has been made. So whether or not they are the birth sons, the way that we would understand it, they've been made by God. They are His creation, and they are His offspring. In that respect, so this covers a lot of the various traditions that are out there. Whether you want it to be a direct mother, father, son deal, or something that's created, but they are called sons of God. And the Son of God in this case is a gerund son of God. This is what you should know about the angels, and eventually maybe even he is going to talk about what it is to be an angel upon the earth. An angel. If you want to go X Files with it, it could be, or in Ezekiel, and particular type of non-terrestrial entity, an alien, who has been called the Son of God, and God Himself being some amazing being elsewhere. So you can imagine God as an alien king, an overlord, some amazing, tremendous entity that is able to just create life in the form of a humanoid form, or at least in the form of a haptic energy, and place it upon matter, unanimated, just the way that you would plug in your phone, fill it with electricity, stored in a battery, and then it would run the programs on it. That's one way you can see the Son of God. Um, so that's an important place to start, but I'll go ahead and read from here. N, the Son of God is of one and the self-same eternity or everlastingness, and of one and the self-same essence or nature with the Father. The From the beginning, as the evangelist says in 1 John 1:1, it is as though he said that the Word did not begin to have his being when God began to make all that was made. For the Word was even then when all things that were made began to be made, and therefore he was before the beginning of all things. Beginning, had his being, was. This word, the, points out to us a peculiar and choice thing above all others, and puts a difference between this word, which is the Son of God, and the laws of God, which are also called the Word of God. The Word and the Word was. This word, with, points out that there is a distinction of persons here, with God and the. This word, is the first in order in the sentence and is the subject of the sentence, and this word, God, is the latter in order and is the predicate of the sentence. Word was God. Verse 2. This same was in the beginning with God. Verse 3. The Son of God declares that his everlasting Godhood is the same as the Father's, both by the creating of all things and also by preserving them, and especially by the excellent gifts of reason and understanding with which he has beautified man above all other creatures. All. Paul expounds on this in Colossians 1, verses 15 through 16. Things were made by him, and that is, as the Father did work, so did the Son work with him, for the Son was a fellow worker with him. Without him, of all those things which were made, nothing was made without him. Was not anything made that was made. Verse 4. That is, by him, and this is spoken after the manner of the Hebrews, meaning by this that by his force and working power all life comes to the world. In him, that is, even at that time when all things were made by him, for otherwise he would have said, life in him, and not life was. Was life, and the life was. That force of reason and understanding which is kindled in our minds to acknowledge him, the author of so great a benefit, the light of men. Verse 5. The light of men is turned into darkness, but yet there is enough clearness so that they are without excuse. And the light shineth in the darkness, and the light shineth in darkness, and the darkness they could not perceive nor reach it to receive any light from it. No, they did not so much as acknowledge him, comprehended it not. Verse 6. There is another more full manifestation of the Son of God, by the consideration of which men are in good time stirred up, even to John's voice, who is, as it were, the herald of Christ. There was a man sent from God whose name was John. Verse 7. The same came from the same, verse 7. The same came for a witness, to bear witness of the light, that all men through John, through him might believe. He was, verse 8, he was not that light which we spoke of, that is, Christ, who alone can enlighten our darkness. That light, but was sent to bear witness of that light. Verse 9, when the Son of God saw that men did not acknowledge him by his works, although they were endowed with understanding, which he had given to all of them, he exhibited himself unto his people to be seen by them with their physical eyes. Yet not even then did they acknowledge him and receive him. That was who alone and properly deserves to be called the light, for he shines by his own accord and borrows light from no one. The true light, which lighteth every man that cometh into the world. Verse 10. The person of the Word was made manifest even at that time when the world was made. He was in the world, and the world was made by him, and the world knew him not. Verse 10. The person of the Word was made manifest even at that time when the world was made. He was in the world, and the world was made by him, and the world knew him not. Verse 11, he came, pardon, verse 11, he came. The Word showed himself again when he came in the flesh unto his own, and his own received him not. Verse 12, the Son, being shut out by the majority of his people and acknowledged but by a few, regenerates those few by his own strength and power, and receives them into that honor which is common to all children of God, that is, to be the sons of God. But as many as received him, to them gave he. But as many as received him, to them gave he condescended to give them this power to take them to be his children, power to become the sons of God, even to them that believe on his name. Verse 13, which were born not of blood, nor of that shameful and corrupt nature of man, which is throughout the scriptures described as an enemy of the spirit, will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God. Verse 14, that Son who is God from everlasting took upon himself man's nature, so that one and the self same might be both God and man, who manifestly appeared to many witnesses that saw him, amongst whom he was conversant, and unto whom by sure and undoubted argument he showed both of his natures. And the Word was made, that is, man, so that by the figure of speech, synadoche, the part is taken for the whole. For he took upon himself our entire nature, that is to say, a true body and a true soul, flesh, and for a time, and when that was ended, he went up into heaven For the word which he uses is used with reference to tense, and yet nonetheless, he is always present with us, though not in flesh, but by the power of his Spirit, dwelt among us, and we beheld his. The glory which he speaks of here is that manifestation of Christ's majesty, which was as it were openly placed before our eyes when the Son of God appeared in the flesh. Glory, the glory. This word, as, does not indicate here a likeness, but rather the truth of the matter, for his meaning is this, that we saw such a glory which suited and was proper for the true and only begotten Son of God, who is Lord and King over all the world. As of the only begotten of the Father, he was not only a partaker of grace and truth, but was full of the very substance of grace and truth. Full of grace and truth. Verse 15, John is a faithful witness of the excellency of Christ. John bare witness of him and cried, saying, This was he of whom I spake, he that cometh. That is, he before whom I am sent to prepare him the way, so that these words refer to the time of his calling, and not of his age, for John was 6 months older than Christ. After me is preferred. This sentence has in it a turning of the reason, as we call it, as one would say a setting of that first which should be last, and that last which should be first. For in plain speech it is this: He that comes after me is better than I, for he was before me. We find a similar turning of the reason in Luke chapter 7, verse 47. Many sins are forgiven her because she loved much. Which is this much to say, she loved much because many sins are forgiven her. Before me, for he was before me. Verse 16, Christ is the most plentiful fountain of all goodness, but he gave out his gifts most bountifully at that time when he exhibited and showed himself to the world. And of his fullness have all we received, and that is, grace upon grace, as one would say, graces piled one upon another. Grace for grace. Verse 17, for the law was given by Moses, but grace and truth came by Esu, Christ, Jesus Christ. Verse 18, the true knowledge of God proceeds only from Jesus Christ. No man hath seen God at any time. The only begotten Son, which is in the, who is nearest to his Father, not only in respect of his love towards him, but by the bond of nature and by means of that union or oneness that is between them, by which the Father and the Son are one. Bosom of the Father he hath revealed him and showed him to us, revealed him and showed him unto us, whereas before he was hidden under the shadows of the law, so that our minds were not able to perceive him, for whoever sees him sees the Father also. Declared him. Verse 19, John is neither the Messiah nor like any of the other prophets, but is the herald of Christ, who is now present. And that is the record of John when the Jews, meaning Judeans, sent priests and Levites from Jerusalem to ask him, "Who art thou?" Verse 20, and he did acknowledge him and spoke of him plainly and openly, confessed, and this repeating of the one and the self same thing, though in different words, is often used by the Hebrews, and it has great force, for they use to speak one thing twice in order to set it out more certainly and plainly. Denied not, but confessed, "I am not the Christ." Verse 21, and they asked him, "What then? Art thou Elias?" And he saith, the Jews, meaning Judeans, thought that, or meaning the tribe of Judah, people from the tribe of Judah who lived in the people of the tribe of Judah thought that Elias would come again before the days of the Messiah, and they took as their basis of their opinion Malachi 4:5. Chapter 4, verse 5, which is to be understood as referring to John, see Matthew 11:14, and yet John denies that he is Elias, answering their question just as they meant it. "I am not. Art thou?" They are inquiring about some great prophet and not about Christ. For John denied before that he is Christ, for they thought that some great prophet would be sent like Moses, using to support this position. Deuteronomy chapter 18, verse 15, which is to be understood to refer all the company of the prophets and ministers, which have been and shall be to the end, and especially of Christ, who is the head of all prophets. That prophet? And he answered, no. Right, before moving on to chapter 22, I have studied a unique knowledge. If you're looking at the YouTube, there is um, uh, there is an image up of a circular diagram with Arabic writing in it, and what this is, it's called the Nafas al-Rahman. And I actually think the original title was Nefesh al-Ruach, which is from the Shar Hagogilim, which is a predecessor text to Kabbalah, written probably, oh, this text was written, uh, the concept of it comes from around the year 200 and may have been part of the chief study of the tribe of Judah, which is the concept that while the soul is one, it is divided in at least three parts. The first part is the nefesh, then there is the ruach, and then there is the neshama. And the goal of a person is to purify his nefesh, and then upon that purification, he is able to receive his own ruach, and it being having been purified in a unique process, it sits upon the nefesh as would a drop of oil upon water. And then there is the neshama, which if you were to set that drop of oil on fire, it would light upon the oil would light, and it would stay lit until it was absorbed by the fire and eventually evaporated into the air and extinguished in the water. Is one way to look at it. And so that is the whole concept of, let's say, the nefesh is the water of your in your veins. The Ruach is the plasma in your veins, and the neshama is the blood in your veins. They're all there, but you may have something to purify the water, and then something to purify separately uh, the plasma, and then something separately to purify the blood. And so these three things, which they exist, and it is said that once that occurs, a person becomes available to be inhabited by a perfect spirit of someone from before. And in this case, they were asking John a question. You, oh person who has, again, those who understand this, just walk with me, and I'm talking about the most ideal sense. You who has a pure nefesh, ruach, and neshama must now have upon you, right? Uh, One of those nefesh, ruach, neshama of one of our great prophets, right? Or do you have the the nefesh, the ego, let's say, of Elijah? Do you have the Ruach, the soul of Moses? Do you have the Neshama, the spirit of, of David? And while they would be present with him, they would be able to earn some more benefits to themselves without at all necessarily being separate from themselves in heaven, where they might be. So you would have it there. And one way I'll explain it rationally is that if you are a person of Jewish heritage and you have a DNA linkage with, let's say, John is a Levite. He was very likely also from the tribe of Ephraim and Manasseh, a particular type of a Kohen, from a particular line of Kohen. And so I think he would then be eligible to turn on aspects of his DNA that were consistent with whatever made these people special. So he would be able to turn on aspects of his DNA that were related to Joseph, or Ephraim or Manasseh, or Levi, or some of the later people who came down that line, or his father Zechariah. He was eligible for those to happen because for some reason he had clarified or uh, cured his various alleles of his DNA, and in doing so, part of it, let's say hidden DNA or DNA that is, they call it junk DNA, that isn't very much used, I was able to light up, giving him some characteristics unique to a previous ancestor. That's a way that I look at it. If you have used, well, so that I would stick there. There's all kind of other ways that you can go back into the actual spirit of it. I believe that there are haptic connections that overlay a person that kind of inhabit the earth when a person leaves their body, and that haptic overlay has a preference for their family and can, with the information that it has still recorded from the life of that person, offer them the ability to act out some of the things of that person. That's why they say if you're in the same room with an individual, uh, they they have a magnetic personality. They can kind of take over your way, and you start acting or talking like them, partially by looking and hearing them, but partially by being in their uh, m- the magnetic field created by their brain chemistry, and the chemical electric brain creates a magnetic field around a person. If you interact with someone else's magnetic field, you become maybe even quantumly entangled, and you can be, if compatible, and you can act a lot like them. So there's a lot that we know in science that can prove this, so we can go on without a loss of faith. Verse 22. Then said they unto him, Who art thou? That we may give an answer to them that sent us. What sayest thou thyself? Verse 23. He said, I am the voice of him that crieth in the wilderness. Make straight the way of the Lord, as said the prophet Isaiah. Verse 24. Boy, uh, Christ is the author of baptism and not John, and therefore the authority of this does not come from John, who is the minister, but wholly from Christ the Lord. And they which were sent were of the Pharisees. Verse 25. And they asked him and said unto him, By this we may prove that the tribe of Judah knew there should be some change in religion under the Messiah. Why baptizest thou then, if thou be not that Christ, nor Elias, nor that prophet? Verse 26. John answered them, saying, I baptize with water, but there standeth one, whom all the world sees, and sees even among you, whom ye know not. Verse 27. He it is that cometh after me, which was before me, whose shoe latchet I am not worthy to unloose. Verse 28. These things were done in Beth Abara, Beth Ab Ara, or Beth Ab Ali, Beth Ab Allah, the house of the Most High Father, or these things were done in the house of, let's say, the king, beyond Jordan, where John did baptize. Going back to my water, plasma, blood analogy, John says, my ministry is to clarify your nephesh, your ego. There's someone who's coming after me who will be able to clarify um, your soul and possibly even your spirit, and get you what you're looking for. You're asking me which prophet or holy person has alighted upon me because I'm pure. Just know that even if I am, and even if I'm not talking to you about it, I've mentioned who I am, with some hints. The one crying out in the wilderness, he's saying, this other person can do so much more for you. So you might go to, uh, well, he can do more for you. That it's more valuable. Who are the Pharisees? The Pharisees are um, a group of people who they're in obedience a particular way. They would eventually become the rabbis, and they have a system, a Socratic system, of asking a question. uh, in this case, it's not Socratic in the way that they knew the answer. They asked the question. I have classic questions that I have to ask you, and when we ask you these, they may have legal implications to them. So, like in a courtroom, here's my question. What's your answer? And so John is giving his answers, but there is a phrase I learned from a Harvard attorney. You should answer the question you wish had been asked, not necessarily the question that was asked. So, hey, whoever I am, there is someone that you don't know yet who's coming who can do so much more for you. Maybe I won't be here long enough to teach you, and to get so close to you. I'm gonna go, but he's gonna be the one you want. Um, and so they're basically saying, then why are you baptizing? Because if I only baptize with water. Okay, well, in effect, we want the one who baptizes with water, oil, and fire. Is what they're saying. And so this sets up the events that would lead to the initial disciples of John leaving and joining Jesus by verse 39. Verse 27. He it is that cometh after me, which was before me, whose shoe latchet I am not worthy to unloose. Verse 28. These things were done in Beth Abara, beyond Jordan, or beyond Jordan, There is Baridan, which is the place where the tribe of Dan would have been up in what is now Ukraine, the former Khazari uh, kingdom. And there is Iordan, another place where the tribe of Dan, which is beyond the Jordan, the river Jordan, uh, beyond, so the Jordan River, so a place where they may have had an interest in part of the river themselves as a tribe when it was distributed in the book of Numbers. These things were done in Beth Abara beyond Jordan, where John did baptize. Verse 29. The body and truth of all the sacrifices of the law to make satisfaction for the sin of the world is Christ. The next day John seeth Jesus coming unto him, and saith, Behold, this word, the, which is added, has great force in it, not only to set forth the worthiness of Christ, and so to separate him from the Lamb, which was a symbol of him, and from all other sacrifices of law. Once again, this word, the, which is added, has great force in it, not only to set forth the worthiness of Christ, and so to separate him from, and so to separate him for the Lamb, which was a symbol of him, and for all other sacrifices of law, but also to remind us of the prophecies of Isaiah and others. The Lamb of God. So, from a Levitical standpoint, a lamb is a celebratory offering. You offer the Levite, uh, the Kohen at the sacrificial fire in the temple, a lamb, because you want to celebrate something. There are other items like a bullock or a ram, or some other ones which you may sacrifice to pay for a sin, or there are neutral offerings. But a lamb is something, and John's a Levite, is as if he were a lamb offering, one that was meant to be because something great happened. So he's describing people by his job. So that person there is a portion on 11, for instance. That's what you find over there. I'm, a Buick, a Volvo even. That's kind of what I'm about here. But the Porsche 911's over there because it's a car salesman. The Levitical priest, the Kohen, would describe someone by what type of sacrifice you should make once you meet him. A lamb, uh, a lamb, which is for a celebratory sacrifice. I'm reading with Chabad, Chabad, .org, the Chumash, Chumash, which is a daily reading that you can read ahead of the books of Moses, and a commentary by Rashi, Rabbi uh, Shlomo ben Yitzhaki, a Frenchman who lived about 1,000 years ago, and uh, possibly Levite, who wrote an entire commentary on the Bible, on the what we call the Tanakh, the Torah, Navaim, and Chatuvim, so the Old Testament. And so I know this information from there. So consider going and typing into Google or whatever system you have, Chumash and Chabad, Chumash, uh, space Chabad. And going there, there's a daily study, and there's some other stuff you can learn. But this is where I understand the symbolism of the lamb. And if I'm incorrect, this is where you can get it correct. But I'm fairly sure the lamb is a symbol of a celebratory sacrifice. Not that he himself should be sacrificed, though. Sometimes an excited person can have a prescience about them. This so that the eventual crucifixion of Jesus was not as sad of an event as it was. It should be taken as a celebratory thing, and it is my impression that for many years I didn't like the image of the cross, the crucifix with Jesus emaciated upon it, but I now have come to understand that that was his great act of humility and he would likely prefer it to be seen as such versus another way he might be presented. So that is it. And a symbol of a person is that what you will show instead of the person's face, so that you kind of know what you're talking about if you just want to represent them. And lamb may have other meanings as well. Which, so the Lamb of God, which this word is in the present tense and signifies a continuous act, for the Lamb rightfully has this power both now and forever to take away the sins of the world. Taketh away the. That is, the root of sins, namely our corruption, and so consequently the fruits of sins, which are commonly called in the plural number sins, sin of the world. Hey, you just said this was an offering, a celebratory offering. This just said this is a sin offering. Well, no. Again, the Levite is speaking. What he's saying is that the very root of sin, not sin itself, the very root of sin is ungratefulness to God. And the whole point of a celebratory offering is that something good happens to you. You have a blessing from the earth, from the world, from time, from God, and you should feed people. So, yeah, we have a particular way of going about it, the sacrifice and how it has to happen. But you should at least sit down and offer someone something, feed them something, give them some information. Hey, did you hear what wonderful thing happened to me? Let me buy you a coffee. Why? Because I want something good to happen to you. Pay it forward is the concept. So the very root of sin is ungratefulness. The Quran says, mankind is wont to be ungrateful. And that is worse in a way. That is the root of their sin. So their ungratefulness leads them to complaining maybe about the good and not being able to recognize it. So then they sin, define things, and in that sinning, they then are required to present another offering, a sin offering. So what if you forget your gratefulness offering and you forget your sin offering? Then you dive further and further in not appreciating what you have and not atoning for what you've done negatively. And this is the very root of the sin of the world. So the lamb is still a celebratory offering, and if when you see him, and again, when we were reading this book, it was very understood that there were Jews around. So when you say Christ, even if you mean Jesus of Nazareth, you also may mean the coming Messiah, Christ, the Christ that is being waited for, that comes from the house of the son of, that's the son of Judah, the son of Solomon. I'm sorry, yeah, the son of Solomon instead of the son of Judah, the son of David, the son of Solomon is the one that people are waiting from. Jesus was the son of Judah, the son of David, the son of the grandson of Nathaniel. For instance, there is another Christ that people are waiting for, who is a descendant of Ephraim and Manasseh and Joseph. He is another Christ. There is the righteous man, and there is the one who has the spirit of Elijah upon him. They may not be Christ, but this is what it meant. So it lets you, when you hear Christ, it lets you dream of Christ. Whoever your Messiah may be, Mashiach. Oh, and then you get to hear the story again, and this inception about Jesus Christ, and this inception about this whoever wrote these notes, the reformers along it. So there are many stories being told at once here. Many people are being spoken about within the bounds of this writing, and this goes back to Hebrew writing. Every line of the Torah has a certain number of letters it can have, and certain letters have certain shapes, so it can only have a certain length as well. And as a result of that, you have to confine as much into. So there's a lot of shortcuts and abbreviations that are present to fit everything in, which then have to be expounded upon. And so, same here. It may not be that there's only so much room, but there's only so much. Maybe each verse can only be so long, and so there's a lot here to be expounded upon, and it is ingenious that that can be taught. Uh, for a very long time. Again, the Geneva Bible, including the marginal notes of the Reformers, 1587 version, book of the Gospel of John, verse 30, heading to verse 39. Verse 30, this is he of whom I said, after me cometh a man, which was before me, for he was better than I. Verse 31, and I never knew him by face before. I knew him not, but that he should be made manifest to Israel. Therefore am I come baptizing with water. Uh, there's confusion around this verse. So I never knew him by face before was actually the marginal note to the Reformers. And face in Arabic is, or his face, wajahu, and yeah, it can mean the front part of the head, but it also means his countenance, his being, his entire body. His it could be saying that we never had a sauna together, so I've never seen him fully nude. It can mean that I have never, I didn't know his complete majesty, his entire history, or it can mean that up to this time, I still haven't figured out how amazing he is. I never knew him by face before, or I never knew him to be uh, uh, unmodest by face, by showing off. I never knew him to do it. So that's what that means. So I knew him not, but that he should be made manifest to Israel. Therefore am I come baptizing with water. And saying that, so this is his cousin. They've known each other. He lived in a room, in his mother's womb when Our Lady Mary came to Elizabeth and was there. How is it that um, my lady, my honored person, she says mistress, but a person who she's Elizabeth is tribe of Levi, and how is this lady of the tribe of Judah, of the royal tribe of David? How are you here with me at this moment? How is it possible that I can be greeted by you? And so they, and then it said that they spent time together in Egypt and in other places. They knew each other, so he's not saying I've never seen him before, but he's saying that I didn't know he had to send him actually, but he does this amazing quality. But I've only known that I would promote him when he did show himself to be his true self. So I'm promoting him now to you. Um, he could have said, "I've always known he was going to be great." That's another way of putting it, but he's being absolutely truthful. So once again, verse 31, and the marginal note, I never knew him by face before. Back to the verse, I knew him not, but that he should be made manifest to Israel. Therefore am I come baptizing with water. So we leave the term Jews, or the people of Judah, and we say Israel. Now, this can be all of Israel, the children of Israel, but to not be redundant, Israel, the kingdoms of Israel and Judah have been separated for some time next to each other, and Israel contained, so Judah contained, overwhelmingly, many people lived there, but it contained the tribes of the 12 tribes of Judah and Benjamin. And then Israel is said to have contained of what remained after the Babylonian exile, the 10 tribes, and many of whom had mixed in with the Samoyed, or the Bedouin, or the indigenous people of the area, the ancient people of the area, and were called Samaritans as a result. But they retained their identity as well. So this was, I came to let them know, I came to let Israel know actually about him. I didn't really, because he's a Levite, I didn't really come to tell Judah and Benjamin about him. But now that you're asking, let's see what I can offer you. So verse 32, Christ. the marginal note, Christ is proved to be the Son of God by the coming down of the Holy Spirit, by the Father's voice, and by John's testimony in the scripture. And John bare record, saying, I saw the Spirit descending from heaven like a dove, and it abode upon him. Rational understanding, there was a mist. And what kind of mist? An electronic, haptic, kind of pixelated uh, cloudiness that fell upon him. I saw him receive his haptic connection. Um, and I have the ability to see these things, John is saying, and I saw it happen, and the people around him would have understood. And so I saw the Spirit, the the neshama descend from heaven like a dove. So he's saying he had a perfect ego or nefesh. He had a perfect, Jesus did, ruach or soul, and clearly at this moment his spirit was perfected, his neshama, his highest self. So he had cleared his the water in his veins, the blood in the plasma in his veins, and the blood in his veins. He was perfect. I saw it. He's saying, and people would have understood that at the time. Verse 33. And I knew him not, but he that sent me to baptize with water, he said unto me, Upon whom thou shalt see that Spirit come down and tarry still on him, that is he which baptizeth with the Holy Ghost. So the one whose ego, or you can say if you want to, in psychological, id, ego, and superego were all perfect. He's able to clarify your ego. That's what his job is. He's here. He's going to work on your ego, and so that's kind of it. That's his specialty. So so he's clarified his the waters in his veins, the plasma in his veins, and the blood in his veins. So he's going to be working on plasma. He's an expert in blood plasma and clarifying it with certain medications. Verse 34. And I saw and bear record that this word, the points out to us some excellent thing and makes a distinction between Christ and others, whom Moses and the prophets commonly call the sons of the Most High, the Son of God. Verse 35. John gathers disciples not to himself but to Christ. Again, the next day after John stood and two of his disciples, verse 36, Christ is set before us to follow, not as a vain shadow, but as our mediator. And looking upon Jesus as he walked, he saith, Behold, the Lamb of God. Verse 37, in this first gathering of the disciples, we have shown to us that the beginning of salvation is from God, who calls us unto his Son by the ministry of his servants, whom as he guides us, we must also hear and follow him home, so that being instructed by him, we may also instruct others. And the two disciples heard him speak. I get it. I hear you. And they followed Jesus. Verse 38. So before moving to verse 38, so what does this mean here? Um, I mentioned in the previous discernment that John's father, Zechariah, very likely lived 100 years or some point before John was born. and had left uh, in a type of a sperm bank. You take a semen, you mix it with a preservative, which doesn't harm or alter the semen, uh, sometimes sugar or honey. And then you at some point later you find, so maybe there were no Levites around, or the one wife that his father married wasn't able to have children. She was barren. And so later on, a young lady who is from his tribe, descends from them, is her name is Elizabeth. She's given from the bank the semen, and she mixes it, she places it within her upper vaginal canal, and while she's ovulating, and if successful, maybe there was enough of it to have multiple tries. Likely on a very particular day, she becomes pregnant. So she's effectively raising John, either on her own or maybe in a commune or some other type of setting. But he is born of his mother, and he doesn't have a we don't know that John has a father around. He doesn't have a traditional family. He's born in a very interesting way. So he's basically saying, thanks so much for being here while I helped you with your egos. We've been out here in a desert like community. In the wilderness. You stayed here. We've eaten honey and locust. This whole time, we've kept ourselves chaste and pure. You all are good people. Now I give you someone who has a home, who has a mother, a holy royal mother, who has an adoptive father there with him, who loves him, who comes from a rich line, who is an angel as we describe them. Go with, he is the person. You should model yourself after your teacher. He's the person you should be modeling yourself after. John would be saying, a ram or a bullock. I'm here as as someone who is not a celebration offering. I'm not even an offering. I'm the one who points out the offering, manifests it for you. I do the work. I sow. I facilitate for you. But there he is. Go with him. Be like him. And so the two disciples, having been prepared for this moment, when they could leave their solitude, they can leave their ego busting life and move on to clarifying their spirits. They followed Jesus, literally followed him with faith. Verse 38. Then Jesus turned and saw them following, and saith unto them, what seek ye? They said unto him, Rabbi, or Rabbi, which is to say, being interpreted, Master. Where is your lodging? Where dwellest thou? They didn't know who he was. They didn't know what he had. They didn't know his name or his background or anything about him, except he was the one who could heal them. Because what do you want? I have a lot. What do you want? You need a pardon, you need money, what do you want? And they it's not even assuming that they knew, but just kind of asking a general question. And when they asked, where's your lodging? Where dwellest thou? Then he knew that they had no idea that they were in the palace. In verse 39, he saith unto them, come and see. Come and see. They came and saw where he dwelt, and abode with him that day. For it was getting later in the night, 10th hour. For those who've been listening the whole way, it was about 4 p.m., right about the time when you retire to bed. So that's the end of the reading here. But the two people who were with him were Andrew, and Simon Peter's brother was one of the two which had heard of it, of John, and that followed him. And so Andrew was considered the very first disciple, and that's verse 40.